so it cut my income in half.
Mackenzie runs a legal services nonprofit, and when the courts closed and stay-at-home orders began in March, they didn't have the money to pay their landlord.
I told him that I wasn't going to be able to come up with all of the money, and he pretty much told me, well, we can start the debt calculations right now. We can start keeping count on what you owe me. And when I told him I wasn't going to be able to afford that, he pretty much told me that I'm going to have to kick rocks. So I gave him my 30-day notice, and I've already had to move in the middle of a pandemic.
At the beginning of April, Mackenzie moved to a room in a house in Oak Park, but says they're still cutting corners to afford the rent there. Mackenzie worries about paying the bills this month, and the next, and for who knows how long this will go on. And they're not alone. Mackenzie is an organizer with the Sacramento Tenants Union, one of many organizations and elected officials across the state asking Governor Newsom to cancel all rent and mortgage payments in response to the COVID-19 crisis that's put so many out of work.
How are we supposed to come up with extra money to catch up on these debt payments?
The governor's put a stop to evictions for now, and the courts won't hear any eviction cases until 90 days after the state of emergency ends. But what happens after that?
It doesn't stop the 3-day notices. It doesn't stop the filings of evictions. It doesn't protect us. It doesn't put money in our pockets to make sure that we can pay our rent. It doesn't do any of that.
If you can't pay your rent, you're supposed to notify your landlord in writing. Sid Lockeretti, president of the California Rental Housing Association, says that he's been working with his tenants to adjust their rent.
We just abated the rent for April and May for those people who are truly COVID affected.
Landlords can adjust the rent however they choose, but as of now, there are no state policies that say they have to work with tenants affected by the pandemic. Lackeretti is against the idea of canceling rents and mortgages.
This isn't going to work. We still have payments to make and whatnot.
He does, however, want clearer policies at the state level, like a renter's assistance program for those who can prove they've been affected by the pandemic, and a clear plan on how landlords can collect back rent from tenants.
And what we're asking for is, it'd be paid over 6 months or some period of time, and, they get 30 days after the emergency is over to start making their payments in full again.
I feel very strongly that we don't want to saddle folks with debt by forcing them to pay that back.
Katie Valenzuela takes office in December as councilwoman of Sacramento's 4th District, but she's already expressed support for the campaign to cancel rent and mortgages. Like many of her constituents, Valenzuela is a renter herself.
But I also recognize that landlords need to make those ends meet too, and a lot of landlords rely on those rent payments to pay for their essential bills. So let's just help everybody for the next few months until we get out of this.
With the governor's new plan to reopen California, it will likely be months before many can go back to their jobs. A bigger question is, how many will have a job to go back to? Economists at UCLA projected double-digit unemployment numbers in the state through 2021, only dropping down to a still high 8.4% in 2022.
How would one expect, somebody who maybe couldn't work for 3 months because of this, without going into debt, how will they ever be able to repay those missing months?
Ultimately, it comes down to, if you occupy a place, will you be able, can you afford to make those payments on the place you live?
And if they can't?
And if they can't, they need to find alternative housing arrangements.
But what that really looks like is families are going to choose to pay the rent instead of feed themselves.
You get an eviction notice, not only does that make it really hard for you to find housing, because obviously landlords aren't too keen to bring in somebody who's had an eviction in their past. You might not even have the income to find a new place. And now we're looking at an increase in homelessness.
Californians aren't the only ones asking to cancel rent and mortgages. All over the country, people are asking their state and the federal government for relief. When asked, Governor Newsom did not say he will cancel rents or mortgages. As for any new state-level policies on the issue,
so we've done a lot in this space. We'll continue to consider doing more.
A third of the U.S. did not pay rent in April. Do you know how many of us aren't going to be able to pay rent in May?